Welcome to the Financial Power Play, the podcast where hockey meets real life money talk. I'm Brett from Uptown Wealth Management, here to help hockey families and professionals create a financial game plan that works on and off the ice. From the rink to retirement, this is your go-to for real stories, smart strategies, and trusted advice. Let's drop the puck and dive in. Hi, welcome to the Financial Power Play. I'm Brett Cranson, and I have a great guest today with me, Shannon Vit. She's a mental performance coach for hockey players, as well as a hockey mom, actually a goalie mom, which I think gives you a little bit of a different mindset there. So let's welcome Shannon to the podcast. Hey, Shannon,
Thank
how's it going?
you. Thank you for having me on. It's exciting.
No problem. So, like I said, we're going to start off with just kind of like your backstory and like how you kind of got involved in hockey. Were you involved before you had kids, or did you just start when your kids started playing?
Well, I mean, hockey's always been a part of my life since I was younger. I had an older brother that played hockey, so I spent my entire life definitely in a rink. And we have the Sioux Greyhounds here where I live, so I mean, always attending hockey games. I've had season tickets for many years. So hockey's always been a part of my life. But out of university, I actually didn't do anything hockey. I worked crisis at the hospital. I did child protection, behavior therapy, different like more social worky type roles. And then from there, I didn't love that type of work. So I started to take other courses to become more coachy because there is a little bit of a difference between counseling and well, there's a big difference between counseling and coaching. So I started to like look to see who the best coaches were on the planet, and I just like kind of followed their formula to get really great results. And my first coaching, when I first started, I was actually a coach for PTSD and anxiety. Um, and that was pretty much all my clientele. And then from there, it transitioned to I had a couple of moms reach out to me to work on the anxiety aspect of their athlete. So that's kind of where it developed. And when I saw really massive results really quickly, um, I got really intrigued by it. And then I started to really obsess over, taking courses and reading material on mental performance coaching specific. Uh, so within that, I took before as a coach, I had taken like things like clinical hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming, which I blended into my um, mental performance coaching, which gives me really great results with my players. Mhm.
Awesome. Yeah, and
Sorry, that
then
was a very
you,
long-winded.
no, it's all good. And then, so you got into mental performance coaching with hockey players and that kind of stuff. So why don't we, I'm gonna stay on that topic and then we'll come back to talking about like your the hockey mom side of your life a little bit. But so what are maybe some common mental and emotional challenges you see with some of the hockey players that you work with?
I think it's being able to hold composure, uh, you know, when they have a bad play. So it's like doing a lot of resets, things like that, teaching resets. Um, Confidence. A lot of the players that I work with have they lack confidence. There might be the arrogant piece. So, you know, I always try to explain to them there's a huge difference between an arrogant player and a confident player. An arrogant player might come across as if they're confident, but they're actually riddled in fear, where a confident player is just like they're really confident in their ability and they're always looking to develop. Um, and it's more of like a neutral, you're playing more neutral. So you're okay to help other players and you're not negative towards other teammates or things like that because you're confident in your ability. Whereas so that's like one of the major things when I work with teams. There's a lot of work with confidence and having the ability, like our body has the ability um, to have that feeling of confidence once we've established what it truly, like what the true meaning of confidence is. We have that ability to bring that to to feel it whenever we want. So I work with them on like confidence anchors and things like that. I work with a lot of goalies, so it's a whole mental game when when a puck goes in the net, I have a whole routine for them. So as they're skating off, I'm getting them to change how their brain processed that. When they come back, getting them to feed their mind really good information. And then just doing some things to change them physically. So by the time they get to the top of the crease, they set their confidence anchor off, and it's like a reset. Like now they're confident, they're ready when that puck drops. They're back in the game like where they should be, instead of focusing on like the past mistake. So it's a lot of work, like different things like that. Just showing them like how to really get into a flow state and play, because we play our best hockey from a flow state as opposed to being fearful. And I teach them strategies on how to improve their game, because again, when we imagine things, we actually have the ability to improve our skill. Your brain doesn't know the difference between real and imagined, so it will think that you're actually on the ice if you're engaging all of your senses into the exercise.
Awesome. And then do you work with mostly minor hockey players, or do you also have some pro players that you work with?
Yeah, so I work like with all from 10-year-olds all the way up to actually even past former pros. I've had which is a whole different session, right? Like when we're working, it's more on when you identify as a hockey player from 4 years old all the way through. That's kind of been your life. So now how you're going to transition into the world, not having these rigid expectations, and just it's just this freedom, right? It's kind of no different than somebody that spends their whole life in prison and then you let them out. Like they're kind of like, whoa, what do I do? So it's the same thing. And that's, I think a lot of players don't look at that. They don't have that future plan. And that's where we see a lot of addiction, and that happens once they leave playing, right? So yeah, it's all different. I work with all different ages, and it's fun. It keeps it fun and fresh for me.
Right. So in terms of let's just talk to the pro players a little bit, and then I'll come back to the minor hockey. The pro players, like what kind of advice or kind of things that you work with the pro player? Because I think the pro mind is a little bit different than obviously a minor
For
hockey
sure.
player.
For sure, because they're there, but the expectation is there too, right? So there's a lot of other things that they're like trying to overcome. I mean, it's different playing hockey in an arena with a couple thousand people to thousands of people. When you make a mistake, everything's like, even like the replay of a game. It's kind of seconds behind. So just it's a whole different working with them. They've got the talent. It's maintaining it and not letting the mental get to them. Because they're always fearing too getting dropped down to like the lower levels, right? So ECHL or yeah. So I guess that would be mostly, and just like that, maintaining the lifestyle.
Right. So talking about the lifestyle, just because I'm the financial guy here a
Yeah.
little bit, I wanted to just get a little bit into their heads a little bit. Like, so when guys are pro guys or guys moving on, like retiring from hockey and moving on to their next thing, do they what kind of mental kind of things that they have, like maybe looking for the next contract or their next job? Like how are they going to maintain that lifestyle they've been living as a pro? Or if they don't get a contract the next year, they're looking for a contract. How do you deal with those mental issues with them? Or do you ever talk to them?
Well, I mean, generally, if they've had, depending on how many years they've played pro, would depending on what their lifestyle is like and what their contracts have been like as well, right? And it depends on what their future plan is. Like, some just want to move back home and, buy a nice little place on the water and kind of, they can basically live their lifestyle doing what they want. But if their plan is to stay like in a big city and uh, be a rock star, then yeah, there's definitely planning that has to be involved for sure. I'm not
And
sure if that
then
really answered your question.
it's okay. I can move on.
Yeah, I
If
do like it.
if you work with so with the minor hockey players, I know probably there's like a difference between working with like a 9-year old and working with a 15 or 16-year-old, because that's where my son is right now in that 15, 16-year-old age, looking, they're in their draft year to the OHL, and so I see there's a lot of some mental block there, or some nervousness when they're on the ice because they're playing for something different now than they were when they were 9 years old. And so, what's the difference? Do you see that difference between
Oh yeah,
those ages? And
100%. At 9, 10, it's intense, but it's fun. At 14, 15, it's now work. And that's part of what I'm trying to work with them on, is to still make it fun, because you play better when you're having fun. But they feel the pressure, because at 15, when you're in your draft year, this is it. You've worked, and these players have sacrificed, a lot, birthday parties, going out with friends, different things like that over the years, and like this is the year. So I think for the most part, like, that's what we're working on, just like working on the skill, like developing that skill, elevating them as a player, working on, the different things that, like, every player is really unique. So it's hard to kind of pinpoint it. But say I have a defensive player that, has difficulty getting into the boards. So we're working on that, on how we can make that really comfortable for them to be able to have that fear in them to get into the boards, because they might get hurt, but not see it that way. Because your brain's main purpose is to keep you safe. So knowing that you could get hit, that's still kind of playing in their mind, right? So the idea is for them to take on a different mindset and see that as opportunity. And that's kind of what sets, the really great players, because if you're playing AAA hockey, and at the U15, U16, you're already a really great player for the most part, right? But what separates the really great players from the best is the ones that can do these like little things and be able to control themselves on the ice. So there's a lot that I work with, and it's on temper, because when something doesn't go the way they planned, they lose they lose it on the ice. And having the conversations, scouts look at that, and if it's between you and another player, you're not getting chosen because you have no composure. So what are we going to do for you, and incorporate the resets in? How are we going to make it that you are in control while you're playing? And then what are you going to learn from it after, right? So working on, pre-game routines, post-game routines. It's a whole system that we work on. And it would look very different from a 10-year-old. A 10-year-old is just very basic, and they're already very imaginative, right? Like when they're playing mini sticks with their players in the hotel hallways, like they're in the NHL when that's happening. A 15-year-old's not doing that, right? So you got to get them to go back and do it.
right.
Yeah.
And then so now it comes to like you're a hockey parent, and I'm sure, I don't know if you work with hockey parents, but there's a mental side to the hockey parent as well, because they're putting a lot of money into this, a lot of energy, a lot of time into their kids, especially when they're start playing at 6, 7 years old. Even they're spending a lot of time at the rink. So have you worked with any parents, or do you like, what kind of advice would you give to parents?
So typically, the most I've really done with parents is like I have had conversations with parents on their behavior at the rink. But I have had many parents ask me to come up with some sort of seminar that I could do to help them help their player. And you're right, like that's where you come in, I think is really, really important. Because if parents knew, well, they know the financial cost of playing hockey and how, the sacrifice that they're making. But I think that's what brings in a lot of the intensity. It's not even, their player itself. It's that, holy shit, I just spent, $20,000-$30,000 this year for you to play hockey. So they get really, in their head. And, that's where we see these big emotions coming. Where if they sat down with somebody like you, I feel like it would kind of take away some of that tension. So, I mean, it was really great for me to meet you because I didn't even know there were, people specifically like you that did this. So, yeah, like, I mean, I think that's like a big part of it. So it's the financial part, and then there is the time piece that you're talking about. Because as parents, like I remember last year, every weekend pretty much we were gone. And I mean, I live in Northern Ontario right now. So, I mean, I don't know, the closest place was 3 hours, 3.5 hours. So you're there, like we're there for the entire weekend. So I'm not getting stuff done that I need to get done at home. I could do my work while I'm there because I work mostly online. So, every day of the week, there's like, running to practices and all of those things. So parents, I feel they bring on all of the stuff that they're doing, and it's almost like at a subconscious level, they don't even realize they're doing it. They're putting that onto their children. But you have to realize, like, you're part of that choice. You were part of the choice to put your child in, rep hockey, and you know what the finances are before going into it. You know what the time, it's the time you're going to have to invest as well. So you got to like pull that back and give them the space. But then just like conversations, I've worked with parents on that, like the car conversations, and would be a more productive way to talk to your player, as opposed to, if they had a bad play, they know it. You don't have to hop in the car and start talking about it. And a lot of parents do that. It's not really productive at that point. You could talk about it the next day, or maybe even later, depending on what time the game was. But it's not really productive to hop in the car. Like they're already down, especially. And I speak because I work with a lot of goalies, so like they already know that they were out of position or whatever. So you want to really, I don't know, be more productive. Like bring out what they did well in the game. What went well for you? Actually, there was an interview with Carey Price's coach, and he was quoted saying, they were talking about Carey and what it was like coaching him, and he said, Carey's Carey. He could have the worst game ever, and when he comes off the ice, I'd say, hey, Carey, like what happened out there? You let 5 goals in, or whatever, and he'd be like, yeah, but did you see that great glove save I made? And it's that mindset in Carey that made him one of the greatest goalies, in the NHL. We as parents, we need to foster that mindset. If we're focusing on the negative, they're going to focus on the negative because behavior is learned. So I think it's really important to try and like keep it positive at the beginning. I'm not saying not to look at the mistake. I want you to look at the mistake, but in looking at it, not in a harsh way, like looking at it, how could we do this different next time? Just like when a goalie lets a goal in, generally in their mind, they'll say something like, oh, why did I let that in? Well, your brain's going to answer that. And it's going to say something like, because you suck, something awful. That's the feedback it's going to give. So I think it's really important to ask the right question. So in that moment, it would be more, how can I keep the puck out next time? Then while you're playing at a subconscious level, it's being worked on, and it's being worked on productively.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, like someone like me could help them with their finances. who understands where they're coming from and how much money they're spending on hockey. Like I might be the only one I think that I know of that actually just looks at hockey families and professionals. I don't think there's any other financial advisors that are out there that do that. I think that mostly a lot of them are just general advisors, or there are a couple of guys who work with like pro guys. They work with like the NHL players, but not anyone that sort of looks back at the families and knows what they're thinking about. So that's great that you point that out. Also, I think, yeah, it's great that part of it does come from the financial side. Like you're putting so much time and money into this that the pressure of that and your kid doesn't perform, you kind of put that onto them a little bit too,
Yeah,
right? So
for sure. That's where a lot of it comes from. And then you have like, the dads that live vicariously through their player. It's
yeah,
fun. There's that too. But I mean, yeah, it's just not productive. It's not productive all around. So
yeah. And so, how do you, as a hockey mom and a goalie mom, really, because like for me, that's sort of the parents who I sort of sit with during the games. I usually sit with the goalie mom or the goalie dad, or just because Mike is a defenseman and it's just easier. But I see the stress that they go through. Um,
Mhm.
so, how do you, as a goalie mom, let's with you giving all this advice to other kids, other parents, how do you um, deal with your when you're watching your son play in net? Like, do you take some of your advice? What kind of advice do you give yourself? Is there any techniques that you use during the
I
game that
do.
help you stay calm?
I do. But I had to learn it the hard way because we have to remember at the end of the day, hockey is like the most intense sport. Like, I mean, it's so fast, and it doesn't matter if it's a Timbit on the ice or it's like the Stanley Cup game. It's intense, right? So I learned the lesson very quickly last year. We were in Detroit for the CCM Motown tournament, and my son was only 9, so he's 10 this year, U9, junior greyhound, and he was a U10, sorry, U10 junior greyhound. He was 9, and there's two goalies, so he was in net for the semifinal game. It went into overtime, and then it went into a shootout. And I held my breath for the entire shootout. And I was thinking, oh, like when after he saved all the goals that we won the game, I remember bringing myself back and being dizzy for like a long period of time. And I was like, okay, he is 9. I need to come up with some strategies for myself to be able to handle this because this is very unhealthy. Um, so what I do now, like going forward, is I have to understand too. Like I'm always saying to players, you have bad games. NHL players have bad games. We all have bad games. Well, I can't let that. I can't let that affect me if he has a bad game, or if he has even if he's having a great game. Like holding my breath and doing these negative, anxious behaviors is not productive, and he's going to sense it too. So what I do is I just like repeat to myself, um, this is 9-year-old hockey, or no, this is 10-year-old hockey. He is safe, he's alive, and no matter what happens at the end of this game, he's safe and he's alive and he's healthy. So just because your brain, its main purpose is to keep you safe and alive. And the only time we should ever be getting into that fight, flight, or freeze is if our life is being threatened. So just by saying that, he's safe, he's alive, he's healthy, I'm feeding my brain information that's like calming. So I find now, and I mean, I work every day. I do a mental routine every morning. I wake up at 5 in the morning, and that's the start of my day. Mental routine, meditation, all those kind of things. So my brain's really coded for this to happen very quickly. But I think it's just remembering to breathe and to, at the end of the day, this is like, it's a sport. He's supposed to be having fun. And if I'm preaching for him to just have fun, why am I, becoming this anxious mess? And I do stay away from other parents. So I'm like the mom that's, off. But I get that. I get the excuse to do that without being called a snob or anything because I am a goalie mom. So it works out in my favor.
Yeah. Yeah, most goalie parents are during the game don't sit with anybody else. They usually are by themselves, somewhere up in the corner, so their kid can't see them, and just so they're not near anybody else. They don't want to hear the other comments and that kind of stuff too. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So let's go back to your business a little bit. So what are your like long-term goals with your mental performance coaching and working with the hockey community?
Well, recently I wrote a book. It's called The Mental Edge: Developing the Mindset of a Hockey Champion. So it's, I guess, more getting that out there a little bit because I just released it. It's available on Amazon right now, but I kind of want to get it into, maybe some bookstores and different places where it's on hand. So that I am currently working on developing an online program. So basically, you can just kind of do it at your own pace. I'd be teaching the skills for players, and I think this would be a really great way for some players that can't afford my services. They would be able to just like take a course, and then have different tiers within that. I don't know. I guess just expanding. I really enjoy traveling around, and working with teams and players all over. Anything to get out of Sault Ste. Marie. So yeah, yeah. I just what I just want to continue enjoying it. What like really gets me going when I open my eyes is knowing that it's really what I'm doing. I'm teaching these players the power of their mind. And I'm using a sport that they love to teach them the correlation between this thought will create this response and, oh, I'm in control. So these are all very interchangeable in their lives. So it's what I teach them isn't just for on the ice, it's for off of the ice as well. So that's kind of, my goal is to, help as many players as I possibly can out there just to understand, like, we actually have a superpower and it's our brain. And as long as you're feeding that brain the best information possible, and analyzing things the best way possible, very productive ways, like the limits are like there is no limit to what you're capable of doing. So yeah, I guess it's just expanding my business and doing this online program for now, and then I'll see once this is completed, then I'll see what my next project is.
That's awesome. All right, so let's just end with a few quick questions. So, what's the best money or mindset tip you've ever received?
The best mindset tip that I've ever received?
Yeah, best money or mindset tip you've ever received.
I guess the best mindset tip is change your thoughts, change your life.
Okay, that's great. And then let's just end with one more. If there's one thing you would say to a younger hockey player, what's the one thing that you would give them advice on in terms of their mindset?
It's just, always be confident, and understand that you're the driver. Nobody else can make you feel a certain way. So you need to drive the bus. You want to be the best player possible, then take the time to learn. The thing is, these players, they spend hours and hours developing their skill, their physical skill on the ice. The same thing with mental practice. It's a practice. So things don't happen just like that. I mean, they do when I bring in clinical hypnosis and NLP, different, the neuro-linguistic programming, but it's a practice. And one day things will just click and you're going to see these little miracles that happen. So just stick with it. If you really, really want something in life, you'll get it if you just stick with the practice.
Awesome advice. And if people wanted to hire you as a mental coach, where can they find you?
They could probably just go on shannonvit.com. And there's, a little bit about, it's kind of like a landing page that shares a bit about what I do. Or they can email me. It's shannonvitmpc@gmail.com. but that's all on the website. So
That's great. Yeah. So if you're looking for a mental coach, go out and reach out to Shannon. She could definitely help you. So Shannon, this was great. Thanks for coming on today.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for tuning in to the Financial Power Play. If this episode sparked something for you, be sure to subscribe, share it with your hockey crew, and leave a review. Want to talk about building your own financial playbook? Visit uptownwealthmanagement.com to book a free consultation. Until next time, stay focused, stay flexible, and keep playing your game.